Imagine coming home from a relaxing weekend in the mountains, still laughing at inside jokes with your wife, only to find a 6-foot concrete wall slicing your backyard in half. That was the welcome we got. I'm Jake Morgan, and my wife, Harper, and I had only lived in our new home in Oak Ridge Hollow for 8 months. We chose this place for the open space, especially the big backyard where Harper dreamed of starting a garden for our daughter. But what we found instead was a cold gray wall and a smug little sign that read, Ecological Conservation Area. No trespassing. It had the HOA's logo. Of course, Oak Ridge Hollow Property Alliance, or OHPA, was the kind of HOA that didn't knock, didn't call. They just acted. And this time, they acted like they owned our land. I dug out the deed and the property survey. It was all there in black and white. That's 75 feet of land beyond the wall. Ours. Undeniably. Legally. Rightfully ours. But when I called OHPA, their secretary, Lillian Crow, barely let me finish a sentence. She said all disputes would be addressed at next month's meeting and suggested I read the updated conservation bylaws, which, by the way, I never received. Frustrated, I sent a formal email with all our documents attached. Their response, a generic, thank you for your input. So I turned to the neighbors. That's how I met Raul Delgado, who lived just 2 houses down. He invited me over, handed me a lemonade, and said, let me guess they took your backyard. Turns out, this wasn't new. It was a pattern, and behind it all, Eleanor Blackridge, OHPA's president for the past 16 years. She rarely showed her face, but everyone knew she pulled the strings while her bulldog enforcer, Brent Mallory, made the rounds. The very next day, Brent showed up at our door with Lillian and 2 board members. He didn't say hello. He just said, Mr. Morgan, your backyard is now designated a protected habitat under OHPA Regulation 9.3. It's not for private use. When I showed him our deed, he smirked. HOA regulations supersede deed claims here. You should have read the fine print. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about grass and garden space. This was a power grab. Harper and I made a plan. She said, let's talk to everyone. If they're doing this to us, they're doing it to others. She was right. We found out about a retired judge, Sandra Whitaker, living at the edge of the neighborhood. Sandra knew Oak Ridge's history better than anyone, and she introduced us to Gerald Locke, one of the original developers, now living at a senior residence nearby. Gerald remembered everything. He confirmed there was no conservation zone in the original design. But more importantly, he told us about a clause in the founding covenant clause 14C. It was meant to protect homeowners from HOA overreach. If the HOA violated property rights without due process and majority consent, their powers could be suspended pending investigation. That clause was our ace. But we needed proof and allies. Then things got ugly. Out of nowhere, we were hit with a $750 fine for lawn height, unapproved paint, and non-conforming landscape, which was wild, because we hadn't changed anything. Then Harper caught a man photographing our house. When she asked for ID, he mumbled something about the Environmental Heritage Task Force. Yeah, not a real agency. Next came the emergency OHPA meeting. We were accused of violating community standards, obstructing preservation efforts, you name it. Brent proposed a $10,000 fine and seizing half our front yard if we didn't comply. I stood up and calmly asked for the exact regulations we'd supposedly violated and the minutes approving them. Brent dodged. So I quoted state law. HOA rules must be documented, publicly available, and approved by vote. A few people started murmuring. Then Harper stood up and handed out copies of the fake government notice. This isn't a real agency. This is intimidation, she said. The room exploded. That's when we hosted the Oak Ridge Block picnic. It was a neighborhood gathering disguised as a cookout. No official agenda. Just lemonade, burgers, and whispered stories. We shared Clause 14C discreetly. And little by little, people opened up. Gloria Tate, the HOA treasurer, quietly approached me. She'd been tracking discrepancies in the financials for years. Fake consulting fees, vague community projects with no receipts, and land purchases made through a shell company. We were getting close. Too close. One night, Gloria called me. Panicked. She'd found solid proof of embezzlement over $300. 000 siphoned out over 5 years. In our backyard, the last piece needed to complete a multi-million-dollar land deal with a private developer. The next morning, Gloria was gone. Her car was found in the park. Laptop still running. Documents copying to a USB drive. That drive exposed everything shell companies tied to Brent's home address. Fake signatures on HOA votes. And Eleanor's name all over the land deal. We filed the activation of Clause 14C. Sent it to the county, the DA, and every board member. That's when things went nuclear. Eleanor showed up at our door. All pearls and politeness. She offered to drop the fines and return our front yard if we gave up our backyard and stayed quiet about the clause. Harper smiled and said, "We'll think about it." But we knew. They were scared. And for good reason. With help from a reporter and the assistant DA. We organized a public meeting at the local park outside OHPA jurisdiction. We presented the evidence, fraud, forgery, embezzlement, and the illegal land deal. To our shock, Gloria appeared with the city commissioner. He announced a formal investigation into OHPA. Then Lillian, a board secretary, stood up and confessed everything. We were threatened. We were manipulated. Eleanor arrived mid-meeting, insisting everything was a misunderstanding. But when we played a recording of her promising the land to a developer under false pretenses, the mask came off. She screamed. She threatened. She tried to flee but tripped and fell flat on her face in front of the entire neighborhood. Poetic. Really. Within a week, Eleanor, Brent, and Lillian were indicted. The HOA was dissolved. The wall was demolished. Our water was turned back on. And we got our land and peace of mind back. 6 months later, our backyard garden is blooming. Kids from the block come over every weekend to plant vegetables. The fear is gone. The silence is gone. Now, we have a community. And all it took was one hidden clause. And the courage to use it. What about you? Have you ever dealt with a shady HOA or a power-hungry community board? Drop your story in the comments. Let's talk about it. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more wild tales of real justice.